Hi there, I'm Vicky Parfano. Welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to be talking about my favourite brushes and paints and showing you how I store them. For instance, I love going to thrift stores and getting some nice inexpensive pottery for a few dollars and storing my brushes like this on my desk. This is an old teapot I found for I think $2 and a beautiful pottery mug and a pottery jug as well. I love collecting pottery when I find it. It makes great storage for a lot of supplies in the studio and it makes my studio more attractive. When I first started painting, I started out with squirrel hair brushes. And when I moved to the synthetic brushes, it was a game changer for me, and I'll show you why. I love the Princeton brand of brushes and they tend to be my favourites. But these are two size 12 round brushes. The one on the right is squirrel hair, and you can see how much thicker it is than the size 12 brush on the left. And it's much more difficult to bring that squirrel hair brush to a fine point. You can see the snap brush snaps back into shape perfectly. So I've moved away from squirrel brushes and I now use synthetic. I also collect things like twigs and skewers and all kinds of things that I find in the garden or on the ground, feathers and things like this, and I can use all of these for painting with. I have a pipette and I have some palette knives. These come in various shapes and I'll use those particularly when I'm using very thick watercolour paint or acrylic paint. You can use Q-tips. I love sea sponges. I've got a big thick brush for collage and I use that for glue. It's a very inexpensive Montmartre brush. And a toothbrush is great for creating splatters. And a straw you can blow through and create interesting art that way. Now, I did a study in the watercolour school that I'm running using two different sorts of brushes, a round brush and a flat brush, and some very inexpensive supplies. These are all made with very cheap paints and very cheap brushes, and if you're a beginner, I would recommend you have a look at my watercolour school. It's a 6-week course, absolutely free. You can jump in anytime, take it at your own pace. You'll learn things like water control and colour mixing and the colour wheel and how to use different brush heads. And I used a lot of different brush heads for the front cover here. Now, my favourite brushes are listed in the description in this video in my Amazon store. So these brushes that I'm showing you today, you can purchase directly through me. I really like the Princeton Velvet Touch Mixed Media 4-piece professional set. And there's a link to that in the description as well. And I love having a mop brush. They usually come in a nice presentation box. The box has changed on this, but the brush that I've listed in the description is similar to this one. And a mop brush is great because it holds so much water and it's great for getting a lot of paint down fast. It's a bit different to a wash brush and I'll show you how. I have a paintbrush holder that stands up on my desk. This is a very old one and I was able to find something a little bit similar, which is the Meaden paintbrush holder, and I've linked that in the description as well. I like being able to stand the brushes up. They dry really well this way. And it's easy to grab what you need while you're working. So there's a tip for you on how to store them in a paintbrush holder. My absolute favourite paper to work with and my favourite journals are the handbook journals. This is the Field Watercolour Journal by Handbook. And it comes in two sizes, the 8x8 and the 6x6. Or there may be even more sizes, but these are the two sizes I like. I like a square format. I use the small one to display my gel prints, and that's worked really well for the 4-inch round gel plate. If you watch my channel, you know I do quite a lot of gel printing videos on this channel as well. And I found this was a great little display book to go with this plate. Today I'm going to be using the 8x8 size, and this is what I use as my swatch book. I do all the swatching of my supplies in swatch books, and it's my recommendation that you take your supplies out and swatch them immediately and have a good play with them, rather than putting a pack in the cupboard that never gets opened. Now, my favourite paint set is by far Daniel Smith. This is the 24 colour half pans, and it comes in a metal box, but it also comes with an empty box. This box was empty when I received it, with the pans, empty pans inside it. And I filled it up from the Daniel Smith tubes, and I added some Pro Metallic watercolours down the end from a different company. And now I have 48 different colours that I can use, and I love using half pans. Now, this is part of the Princeton Snap Paintbrush set white, and this is a 4-piece set. I've added in a number 2 round. It comes with a 0 round, but I added in a number 2. I bought that separately, but I found this set to be a really versatile all-rounder set, and it's an inexpensive way to get into a decent set of brushes by buying the set, and I have that linked in the description in my Amazon store. And a step up from this would be the professional set, the Princeton Velvet Touch Mixed Media 4-piece set. And this has a number 4 round, a long round number 8, an angle shader 3/8 of an inch, and it has this pointy end that you can use to scribe into your paint, or it's great for lifting masking fluid off your page. It also has a 3/4 inch wash brush. Now I'm going to start showing you these shapes with the mop brush first, and how you can create perfect circles by squashing the brush onto the page and creating it just how I've done there. So I'll create a few more. You squash it down, turn it round, and it creates a perfect circle for you. And you really can't damage these mop brushes. They're very sturdy. So I'm going to create a double page spread, and it's going to be a cross between a sampler page where I'm showing you, and I need a bit more water there because it's gone a bit dry. You need to keep your mop brush wet. That's the whole point of it being a mop. It absorbs lots of water. But I'm going to use this as a sampler page. It's also going to be an exercise in composition and in colour scheme. So now I'm going to create a wash, and you can see how quickly you can create a wash using a wash brush. The secret is lots of water, and if you add lots of water, then you're not going to get harsh lines. You can build up your colour gradually. So I'm starting with a very pale blue colour, and I can add more pigment as I go to build up a deeper wash if I want to. For this particular spread, I'm just going to have some very pale blue in the background because I want to put some designs over the top of it as well. It's going to be an abstract piece, and you can see how fast you can work with a wash brush and lots of water. So we're back to the Princeton Snap Brush set here, and this is a angle shader. So it has an angle on the end of the brush, and I'll show you how this technique works. So I'm going to pick it up and use a dry brush technique where there's much more pigment than water. You can see how the bristles have separated, and you can just lightly touch this to your page and you get a streaky effect like this. Now, if you add a little bit more water, you're going to get a flat wash in a stripe effect. And angle shaders have a really good application in all kinds of painting when you need to get into tight corners. So this is smooth and the dry brush effect is streaky. So in this painting, I used an angle shader to get into this area here around the stem of the rose because that was a tight area and I wanted to add a bit of shadow. Then I wanted to remove some pigment with clear water from above that part of the stem, and the angle shader is a perfect tool for that. Now this is a really fun brush. This is a Princeton grainer brush, and when you wet it, you can see how spiky the bristles are. So the angle brush gave us a dry brush effect, but you can get the dry brush effect by using a grainer brush and quite wet paint. And I'll show you what this looks like too. So I'll just bring in a different colour, sweep it across, add more or less pressure to the brush, and where I've added more pressure, you can see it's given a nice solid colour and there's a streaky effect as well. And I've used this grainer brush on very rough paper here to get an interesting effect in this abstract piece. I've used the mop brush to create the pebble shapes. So I'm bringing in a pencil and I'm going to be writing in the brushes that I've used as a reminder, so I can open up to this page and it gives me some ideas as to what kind of brushes I can use, particularly when I'm working in abstract, to create texture and interest in my work. And because this is a book of swatches, this is the perfect place to add all these little details as reminders of the tools that I have and what they look like when I've used them. So already I'm starting to build up a bit of an abstract painting here over the 2 pages. The wash has dried completely, so I can start building on top of that very pale blue wash. Now there's some metallic paint, some metallic ribbon on this painting here. And I used my size 0 Princeton brush for that, and also a size 2 brush. And I bought this brush individually because the set comes with a size 0. And I'm going to use Pro Metallic paints, and there's a wonderful glittery gold. So this is the Pro Metallic brand. And I'm getting it nice and wet. When you want to make very fine marks, it's a really good idea to have a strip of off-cut paper that you can practice your stroke on before you commit to your final piece. So I'm holding it very lightly and I am using a very light touch to the page, and then if any places have missed, I can come back and very carefully fill them in, and that gives me a ribbon technique. So I'm going to write down the brush I've used for that. So you can create half pans by using your paint tubes, and when you put them in your set, you need to let them sit overnight to dry, and then once you've done that, you can have a set of half pans. You can screw the lids back onto the tubes very carefully, you don't waste any paint, and you can have this set of half pans custom designed with the colours that you like. Now here I'm using the long round, and the long round number 8. I think it's a number 8. Let me just double check. Oh, sorry. Yes, the long round 8. You can see the sinuous lines that this creates. This is great for creating stems and leaves and pointy shapes where you want lovely curved lines. And depending on the pressure that you use, you can have thin or thick lines. And as I said, it's a very sinuous kind of a shape. A long round brush is a really handy one to have in your arsenal. You can get fine points by just touching it to the page. You can get broader lines by adding more pressure, and it's great for botanical work. You can also notice where I'm holding the brush a fair way back from the ferrule, and that gives me that very light touch. So that's the long round. As I'm building up this abstract piece, I'm thinking of composition, colour scheme, direction. I'm choosing colours that I think will look nice together. And in this painting, I used my long round brush to achieve the effect with the branches and the points on the leaves. And you can see I've done some gentle wash in the background in those multicoloured leaves in the back of the painting. Now I'm using the 3/8 of an inch, the 3/8 of an inch angle shader, and just doing some small shaded angles, just for a bit of a design element. So that is the 3/8 of an inch angle shader in the Velvet Touch. And this is the round number 4. It's not a long round like the other one. It's actually a round brush, but it's a shorter round brush. It doesn't have that long tip. You can still get these beautiful fine lines with it. I've used some metallic Daniel Smith paint there. I think that's iridescent moonstone I've just used with a round number 4. And this is useful for doing really fine details. In this little painting, I used that to create the hills in the background and to make the pine trees as well. So I'm going to turn my work around, and this is something that I recommend you do with your work whenever you possibly can. I'm using a little IKEA ceramic dish. I find these are fabulous for mixing your paint in, and they wash out perfectly after you've finished with them. Now I'm just going to do some fun pieces on the sides, and I don't really want to get this page dirty, so I'm going to add a piece of paper towel underneath to absorb it, because I'm going to use quite a lot of water and I don't want it to puddle under this page. I thought having some elements coming off the edges of the page would add a little bit of whimsy to my abstract. And so I'm going to do this on both the left and the right hand page, and just have little pieces coming in from the edge using each of the different brushes, changing up the colours a little bit. I'm using the same colours throughout, but I'm adding in, I think I'll add some blue. I think it needs a little bit of a pop of colour somewhere, and probably some really dark perylene green, which is a colour that I really enjoy painting with. And here is a good tip if you're struggling with composition. Turn your work upside down, sideways, look at it in a mirror, and you'll be able to see where there are any imbalances much more easily than when you're sitting with the work close up and it's almost like you can't see it because you're so close to it. So move it around, get up, walk away from your table, come back, take a rest from it. All these things help you develop a really fine sense of composition. Now I'm adding some dots. Even though it's a very big brush, I can just tap, 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 and I get nice fine dots. This is the brush I used for the botanicals, and here's the brush laid on its side just to create these lovely shapes in the bottom left-hand corner in the blue. And I'm using an upward motion, working away from me just to create those shapes at the top. And I'm going to turn around and look at it from the other side, and I'm going to add more of these details to the left-hand page so that the composition is balanced. Just some very fine dots with a smaller tip. And a sweeping motion gives curved lines. And you can actually use the very tip of the bristles upright. Even with the angle shader you can do this, or a flat brush, and you can get very accurate lines just by tapping in a perpendicular fashion. And I can see a little bit of a blank space there, so I'm going to turn it on its side this time and fill in this space. And what this exercise will do for you, it will give you confidence in your brush strokes. It will also help with water control, because you'll see where you're not using enough water, you'll get a dry effect. That might be something you like. If you're using too much water, then you'll get puddles and the pigment won't be very strong. So it just helps you understand your supplies, your materials, what have you. And I used this brush for the pink lines of shadow around the petals of the rose that help define them. So I used that very small brush to do that. So that's our spread finished. You can order any of these brushes through my Amazon links. I will really appreciate anybody who shops with me. Thank you so much. And make sure to leave me some comments if you have any questions. I am so very grateful for your support, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.